Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast, the number one most listened to dental podcast in the world. In the universe, sorry. Yes, yeah. There's some trending ones in Mars. We are very fortunate today to have someone very close to the Bulletproof ecosystem, our very own doctor, Erika Pusillo. Because I do that with Deborah Nash, I might as well just drop a doctor on you, Erika. You're cool with that, aren't you?
I'm cool with that, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if I've told you this recently, but we've just become the number one top-rated podcast in the universe.
You've already said that.
No, I don't. Erika, is that news to you? Did you know that we were that?
That's news to me. I think that's a pretty big deal. I knew you guys were always one of the top, but now
right? No, we're the top. This is the pinnacle of podcasts.
Yeah,
Joe Rogan, watch out.
That's right, Joe Rogan, watch out.
So if you're new to Bulletproof and you've been living under a rock for the last 6 years, I'll give you a little background on who Erika Pusillo is. So she works in Bulletproof. She's been in my ecosystem for 15 years, taught me a ton. She is the Office Manager of the Year Green Award. I'm going to mess that up. I should have practiced this with you. She's a big deal in AADOM.
So fellow in AADOM.
No,
she's got a lot of...
I can introduce myself. If that's
good job, Craig. You couldn't even get an intro right. Good job. She's now reverting to introing herself.
I'll put it afterwards, Erika. It'll be polished and pristine.
Yeah.
You had one
Pete,
job.
We're going to do that, right, Pete? Okay, Erika, tell us a little bit about yourself for the person who doesn't know.
Yes, I've been working with Dr. Spodak at Spodak Dental Group for 15 years. Started in sterilization. And I worked with Dr. Spodak as a dental assistant and then the office manager, operations director. I also am affiliated with AADOM, the American Association of Dental Office Management. I am the 2023 Green Leader. I am also a diplomat with the association, which is the highest level of training that you can have, certification that you can have as an office manager. To date, as far as I know, there's under 100 in the country that have that distinction. So that's a pretty big deal. And I've also been recognized as the practice administrator of distinction 2 times. So that's one of their highest level of recognition that you can have.
And then just to bring it down to the mere mortals in the audience, Erika is a person who has a unique ability to love problems and be really good at solving them, incredibly intelligent, and a leader that grows other people. So because of her, the people that she interacts with are more and can do more and helps the mastermind and office managers around and dentists alike. But what I think is the greatest superpower that you have is your ability to really help people unlock their potential and turn them into more people, more beneficial leaders. You're a multiplier. You make people better. That took me a long time to say. Build back better, but better build back.
Serious, man. But serious.
Come on, man. So, good to have you, Erika. We're going to talk a couple things today, but our main goal, because we have a pithy podcast, but just creating the aligned office manager. That's the most common complaint. We just hung up on our mastermind call, and it's always the same thing. I hired this person because they had an amazing resume and they handled a practice with 20 operatories or 20 locations. And it was a huge disappointment when I brought this person in because they weren't a fit and blah, blah, blah. So the most important thing, we go back to this all the time, is vision and alignment. What do you want to create as a dentist? It's not a one size fits all. So why is that so important? What do you see in the field? What are your sources of frustration? What are the office managers saying to you? And how can we fix it in 38 minutes or less?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is that people will recognize that they have a need. They hire in an office manager and they don't properly communicate the expectations or the responsibilities. And I think we throw out the word office manager. We have our own assumptions and expectations of what that means, but it's very different. So some practices have an office manager, and that person is the greeter, the treatment coordinator, the insurance verification person, not the CFO, payroll, HR, operations person. And that's fine. So you can have whatever works for your organization, whatever you need, but people don't do the time to list out what are those things that I need find a person that actually has the skill set, the qualifications or potential, and then make sure that you're communicating to that person exactly, those things. I think that we don't meet as often as we should. I think a lot of times those meetings are typically going to be on the fly, which is incredibly frustrating on both sides. The office manager wants an immediate answer, response, because they want to work on or complete what they're doing now. The doctor's in the middle of having a patient or, running behind in some way. They're frustrated already. And now they're having to stop, switch gears to try to put the business hat on and to answer that question. And I think that having dedicated, consistent time every single week, we meet every single Wednesday morning for an hour, whether we have an agenda or not. And I think that that's really important to have that time set aside, because you're going to be more proactive. And I think that the dynamic and the problems that I hear is typically reactionary. And, so I think if we're going to solve all the world's problems, is have the dedicated time, understand what you need, and make sure you communicate those needs to your office manager.
I think that's a great hack. If you get nothing away from the rest of the things that are in the pod, I think having a regular cadence, preferably on a non-clinical hiatus, right? Like not on a lunch break, because you're following up on your email, but almost if you can take your non-clinical day and just be in a place of strategic thought with your office manager versus, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I want to ask you about this. And Erika, to your point, it's really hard to go from I'm Mr. Science, Mr. Clinical running a handpiece all day to now I am this strategic visionary CEO to help my office manager. It's a very hard transition. Ask me how I know, right? I tried to do it all. And it was when I really got aligned, I think, with my office managers in the past, was when there was intention around the meetings, just like you're saying. So I think that's
by the way, sorry Pete, to cut you both, but if you can't allocate the strategic time, because let's just say every time you're in the office, Mrs. Jones and here's the hygienist comes over and grabs you, it's okay to just take that 1 hour meeting and do it at Starbucks. Just get some.
I would actually recommend that, quite honestly.
Yeah,
wouldn't you, Erika?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we get pulled in so many different directions. And even at our own office, we will have that dedicated time. And then we've got a revolving door of people coming in, not understanding the importance of that 1 hour. And it's often interruptions for things that are non-urgent.
Right. Yeah. So I think so many dentists, as we look at quote unquote the office manager, is we are trying to hire for solutions for ourselves. And let me expand on this. Is that it almost becomes a, hey, you're going to pretty much do everything and I'm just going to do the dentistry. I think we see that a lot, right? It's an abdication of like, you do everything and just handle it. Just handle it, right? And you're right, Erika. It's I've been guilty of that in the past, right? I just want to do the dentistry. Leave me alone. You handle the business stuff. You handle the people. I'll handle the dentistry. And that can hurt you, obviously, as we've all seen time and time again. That will hurt you in the long run. Temporarily, sometimes it works. But over the long haul, it doesn't create that alignment that you probably need. You're just running on the treadmill, Craig, right? So, Craig, you talk about the vision and the big scope and kind of reverse engineering your life and your career. And I think it really starts with, if your business is the conduit, it really starts with the office manager. I mean, they're directly responsible for being a key team member for the success or failure of that. Agreed?
Yeah, I want to say one thing too, just so that people can understand the pain of the transition for me and for Erika as well, is that you look at these successful relationships, whether it be a spousal relationship or a successful doctor office manager relationship, you're like, man, that's awesome for them. They must work in Florida. It's easy, whatever. But I just want to point out where I was. So I had an 18 operatory facility. I'm the busiest doctor in the building. I'm doing $2.5 million with my own hands. I don't have time to pee. And Erika is like, I can run this whole thing. I think I can learn the skills and things to run this whole thing. And there's a very interesting thing that happens. It's like riding a bike. I always say it. When you teach your kid to ride a bike, you have to push your child down a hill and let them go. And that's pretty scary. That's your child. That's the most precious thing in the world. So your business is like your baby. You actually have to let it go. They have to start pedaling on its own. The goal is for the person or the child in this analogy to start pedaling so they can be successful, and they're going to make a mistake.
Right.
So one thing that was very intentional is that you said it's very difficult to switch from clinical to business. And the reason being is in clinical, every micron matters. In business, you have to zoom way, way out. So you physically have to go from a micromillimeter of margin closure at 9 to 10 a.m. And if you're meeting with your office managers at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., now you have to think long term. Where are we going in 3 years?
And be direct. And to your point, Craig, I think being directionally correct, meaning you don't have to be spot on with your strategy. You just have to be directionally correct and take action.
Right. But
what
do you want to
stuck.
create, though? That's the hard part. And we're turning Erika into the guest listener here, so I apologize.
Well, I'm going to ask her something specific. Erika, like, would you agree that the kind of the holy grail of this relationship between the doctor and office manager would be this meeting where you would come in and say, it's almost like you're reviewing the state of the nation, right? Like, here's all the subjects, right? Here's where I'm going to need your feedback. Here's the things I don't need your feedback, but I want you to be aware of. And it's almost like we talk about when Sharissa and I get up on stage and we talk about the bobblehead when the hygienist is presenting treatment in front of the patient and the doctor is in there and he's going, mm-hmm. Almost like the holy grail would be the bobblehead. There is almost like you've trained someone, you've been working with someone week after week after week, and you get to a place you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I would do. Yes, I agree with that. Just like the treatment recommendations. So that would be the holy grail. Obviously, you can't get there with just a super hire, right? Like Craig, you were saying, hiring someone who said they managed a DSO of 20 locations. That doesn't work. I mean, it could work, but that alone doesn't mean that they have the chops to do it.
Absolutely.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah, I think the reason why is that most dental office managers are trained from within, and that experience is very different. They have a unique skill set that fits the organization they were in and not necessarily for the organization that they're going to be in. I think what was important that you said about going into your meetings prepared is that a lot of times the office managers are conditioned to go into the meetings with their notebook and to take orders.
Right.
Not to go in there and be somebody that's going to be strategically.
You nailed it, right? It's like two people are showing up waiting for a presentation from the other person. And it's like, oh, well, I don't have any updates. Right? And so that's why, like, I love a structure to, everyone knows I'm a fan of a checklist and things like that, but it's nice to give people like, hey, here's some of the general ideologies that you should be discussing in your meeting. Because I think so many people listening to this wouldn't even know how to structure said meeting. Can you give some, like, when you and Craig, let's just say when you're having your high level meetings as straight up office manager, like what were the core subjects that you were going over?
Yeah, that evolved over time. And I just want to say what's really important as well is that even when you think you're being clear, you're probably not. And I'll say, early on, when we talked about my responsibility would be profit of the organization. And so, okay, profit is very clear. We understand what that means. My approach to achieving profit was very different than his approach. And so that's where we were misaligned. And so in the beginning, you have to have many conversations about saying, we want to get to this profit goal. And now we have to align on what that approach is going to look like. Here are some non-negotiables. These are the things that we're not going to trim. Or this is not that important to me. Trim all day long. I don't care how we get to that in terms of expenses or in terms of team or in terms of, adding additional things to your business. And so for me, what was most important earlier on was making sure that the practice was protected and safe and making sure that we were protected from liability. So, I was working on the HR side, updating the handbooks, updating our training protocols, making sure that we had OSHA and HIPAA compliance and, making sure that all of our systems were set up properly so that we had good data. That does not show short-term profit gain. And that is exactly where we started having some of those issues. It wasn't that I was.
Can you be specific? I'm having trouble recalling. So we'd meet up and give me an example.
Of what example? What do you mean?
So what we started having issues. I want to know an actual example of an issue of misalignment there at that particular time. So Absolutely. You're working your tail off in this direction. What was the conversation? What was going down? I want to hear the specific.
Cash flow was tight.
Got it.
Profit was going to an all-time low.
We were running a non-for-profit at that point.
Yep.
But she was saying is that your way of solution was quite different than hers, right? And you
she
guys
didn't understand the problem.
Right.
And to be perfectly honest, guys, I didn't understand the problem. I was like, okay, the CPA says, congratulations, you have an $8 million top line and you've made $100,000. I'm like, well, I produced $2 million with my own hands. If I went to any DSO, I would have made 4 times as much money. What's going on here?
I think this is the, like, gosh, how do I say this? This is the power of like getting in a group, whether it's Bulletproof or something, is learning how, like we always talk about KPIs, Erika, right? But like the superpower is not just getting the KPI. I mean, like, that's bad. That's good. Superpower is being able to, what do I need to do to go 3 steps back to exert the change, right? To exert the change rather. And that is where you become elevated as a business person, is when you know what levers to tweak, right? Craig gave that example about that FedEx guy and here's the $10,000 bill and he tweaked the little screw, but that is where it comes. And so, yeah, anyway, I'll stop on that.
And then there's frustration there too. So when Erika's misaligned and I'm hearing like, we're going out of business, I'm stressed out. And she's like, yeah, but I'm doing something really important, because HR can set you out of business too. And there's could be hurt feelings. So I was just curious, but go ahead, Erika.
So again, when we talk about the, the profit issue, for instance, is, if I would have known the most urgent thing, and also at that time, I didn't know much about P&Ls. Like, when you talk about being on the job trained, whichever organization you came from, and for me, this was the first organization, dental assistant, no business training. Now I'm in charge of profit, and to a certain extent I'm learning and doing at the exact same time, like figuring it out. I don't even know what I don't know at that point, or what questions to ask. And so if there was the immediate cash flow is our problem, and really understanding what that is, and then being able to ask the right questions. I think we don't ask enough questions, and that's how you get aligned, is by constantly making sure, okay, what I'm hearing you say is, and then making sure the person's like, yes, that's exactly what I mean. Or
do you feel like there's friction in what you just said, because the dentist has to be the nucleus of everything? Because we went to dental school, we have all the answers, and we were never taught this level of financial acumen. So some people would probably shy away from even a meeting like this, because I don't want to be exposed for having no business acumen, right? And maybe these are why things don't happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that, what's helpful even for the office manager is, like, when we're at that point when the doctor is exasperated by saying something's got to change and it needs to change now, it's unsustainable to have somebody come in and to take on 50 things at one time. I think it's more sustainable to say, let me offload at least 2, 3, 4 things off of your plate. Let's nail this. Then we're going to slowly add more on. And that can be quick. I mean, give 2 or 3, 4 things each month, or, every 3 months. And that's more sustainable than being like, hey, now you're responsible for the entire organization because I'm so frustrated. I literally want my hands off now. Because when you hand over the keys and you're left in the dark now, not even knowing what this person's doing and the decisions that they're making, now you can be either exposed in your organization, or you will have things happen that is pretty, the opposite of what you're trying to achieve.
All right. So you've given profit goals. Go ahead, Greg.
Okay. No, you go, because it's going to be on tangent, and I get my
we're going to keep you. We're going to remember this is the pithy. I want
to say one thing, because I want to point out a trap.
Okay. People. So you've got profit goals would be a good directionally conversation. HR updates there, right, would be a good thing. Here's what I'm working on. I think it's so nice. Sometimes we sit around and like, what do you even do? Like you think like, what are you even doing? I'm in here prepping, and they don't even know what you're doing. Like these meetings are sometimes not for answers. It's just, hey doc, did you know that I'm revamping X, Y, and Z? Oh, that's great. And so, going back to this alignment, I think the alignment is predicated on the communication of knowing what one person's doing. Divide and conquer, right? I'm going to go do this. You go do this. This is still on my list. This is now on your list, kind of thing. Yeah. Also, would you agree that a buy when kind of thing is super important in this capacity?
Absolutely. And I'll even say, because sometimes, all the time, one of the frustrations I hear from the office managers, they're not feeling appreciated. But what they're forgetting is that how can you appreciate when that person doesn't know what you're doing? So it really does tie into that whole appreciation conversation. So I know sometimes, most often time, I think people that end up in office manager like positions, especially the ones that are doing more of the behind the scenes stuff and the numbers, financials, are introverted. And introverted people are less likely to be the ones that are going to boast about, look at all the things I'm doing. And so, you have to turn that part off to say, okay, I'm not gloating about all the amazing things that I'm doing, but I need to inform my doctor so that he's aware of all the things that are happening in the practice. That's important.
So in your experience, you've trained, all through almost every Bulletproof mastermind, you've had access or trained to all the office managers. And you're saying one of the underlying themes is that they feel underappreciated for the work that they do. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Interesting. That's great. That's great intel.
This is really important too, is that appreciation is not good job.
Right.
It is not that, because, again, like, that's so unclear and vague. And so you have to be specific to say, hey, I actually really appreciated that you stayed late last night. That was really meaningful. And that showed me that you were here to get it done at whatever cause that was. You have to be specific to reward the behavior you want that person to continue to do. And then also have the conversations about the ones that you don't want them to continue to do. Otherwise, when you're so broad and vague, they're going to interpret it how they're going to interpret it. And maybe they stopped doing the things that you enjoyed and started doing more of the things that you don't. So you have to be specific and clear.
I want to interrupt as the emotional basket case of the call here, because I know you guys are a little bit more logical. What we're talking about here is human relationships, and there's nothing more tricky than human relationships. All the problems we have in the world are based on fractured relationships. So what we're really talking about when you're saying what you're saying is, Erika, you're saying that these people feel underappreciated, but unfortunately, human beings perceive appreciation, love, respect in different ways, just like with our spouses. So magic takes hard work, and there's a normal trap here. The trap is, I have someone qualified in my organization, or I'm hiring someone in. We don't clearly define and work on the relationship, and it gets fractured. This person sucks. They know what they're doing, or a doctor doesn't appreciate me. No one talks. They literally quiet quit, which means they get disengaged, or they actively quit, it's just like any other relationship, or they file for divorce. And what people realize through different relationships in their life is, after getting the divorce and after the sexy time wears off, whatever that takes, a couple of years, maybe. Peter and I have been married a long time, so probably like 10 years. It'd probably take that was a bad joke. Sasha doesn't listen, so it's okay. But when it all wears off, you realize, okay, I've got to do this work anyway. So really, this comes down to hard work, difficult conversations. And for those who have not listened to Erika and I speak before, there was a tough time. There was a time when Erika sent me a resignation letter and said, hey, in a very short wording, I like what you're up to and what your mission to do dentistry at. That's cool. But the way you're being a DB, and I'm not going to be here, and I got to go. And for me, it was like, that was one of the most loving, caring, careful communications I could have received. It meant to me that this person cares enough to coach me. So I felt at many points in my own career that I was not able to be the leader I wanted to be. And I had an expectation of what I wanted to be, and I failed every day. And I was angry, and I was frustrated, and I was just scared shitless. And I just want to point out that these relationships, whether they be like Michael or John is a friend of mine who's got a $1 billion net worth. He literally sat with Erika and I and poured into us. I remember where we were sitting having coffee, like, hey, Erika, this means this, and this means this. This guy runs multi-billion-dollar companies, helping us with a little dinky dental practice. So it's just, all I can say is the law of compound interest works with friendships and relationships as well. Develop the ones you have. Give the people permission to fail. If someone makes a mistake and you fire them, you failed at the potential of what they can, because you send a ripple through the entire organization of like, better not mess up. So most people will just say, I'll look busy, I'll act busy, and I'll just stay out of the firing zone. So I know I went on a tangent about that, but just don't fall into that trap. Invest in the people that you have.
I think what's also really key when you talk about alignment is transparency. People don't know how to help unless they know where someone needs help. And, Dr. Craig, you were always very transparent with a lot of things. We were like, hey, listen, I want to be a better leader. And you were acknowledging that you believed you weren't at
I
whatever
knew I
that.
wasn't.
And but what that did is it allowed the common average team member, to say, wow, if somebody that has a successful business, or what we interpret that to be, has problems and challenges, it makes it okay for me to as well. And so, your transparency about, hey, listen, maybe I don't have the business knowledge, or I'm not getting the results that I want to see, allows me to then say, here's my blind side, and I need help getting the information. Because people will withhold that for fear of maybe losing their job, or not being able to make more money, and so they hide what they would otherwise really need support and help. And I think that's something that's important, is you can train anybody that's willing to train, and you have to make it okay for people to tell you what they need help in.
Yeah, I wish there was an easier way through it, because what we just described is a history of pain and challenge and difficulty. But that's a rewarding part. I mean, I look at a lot of the long-term relationships in Erika's 15 years in SDG, and these are the things for me as a relationship guy are the most important thing of all. Like, because I'm a better person because of these people in my life, and they forgive and love me and give me grace, even though I'm failed and flawed. I'm just trying to get better, and they know that. And believe me, I make a lot of mistakes. Erika walked up yesterday and she's like, I was talking to Sammy at the front. I'm like, so I'm really sorry. She's like, this doesn't sound good. I remember she's like, what did you do? I'm like, I just can do it. I'm like a bull in a china shop. I say the wrong thing sometimes, but like every day, just get a little bit better. And you got people that support you and want to invest in you and tell you the truth. Invest in your people too. I just want to, I'll get off the soapbox with that.
Let me pause everyone for a second, because Craig, I asked Erika, what are the commonalities that you see with office managers? One of the commonalities we see with the dentist, Erika, is that I feel like I'm the nucleus of everything, right? I feel like I can't sit down. I'm eating as I'm walking, between patients. I'm involved in every decision. And so here you have someone, you're saying underappreciated, and they don't know what you're working on. Here you have someone saying, like, nobody cares, I have to do everything, right? And so that is something to solve for dentistry. And we deal with this all the time. It's like, and the only way out of the nucleus of everything is through training and meetings and communication and transparency, to say, like, hey, I really hate doing this. Can you please take this off? Or can we find someone to take this off my plate? Or, hey, I finally had to tell my team once, if I'm not involved in the decision, then please don't involve me. Right? Because there's limited, like Craig says, there's limited RAM, there's limited bandwidth. You can't make a million decisions a day and expect them to all be quality. Preserve my bandwidth.
But they ask because if you made the decision and it fails, that's on you and not on them.
Right.
And so that's why it's so crucial to say, if somebody does fail, when somebody does fail, is to talk through, okay, here's how we're not going to do that next time, but not make it out that it's bad person, just a bad decision. And that's really tough, because I think anybody coming into work, first of all, we're all just trying to make a living at the end of the day. That's all we're trying to do. And the majority of people have good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
They want to help. So when they make a mistake, it is not intentional, and it is not to cause more harm. It is just inexperience or maybe lack of knowledge. And so we just have to stop there.
Yeah, but the repercussions can be like, I won't do that again. Like, good dog, bad. I won't do that again. I'll just stay quiet here in the corner. And like Craig says, like, I'll just stay under the radar, and I'll be ineffective and I won't get fired.
Seinfeld.
What?
Costanza would say, like, I figured out a hack for work. Just always look like you're mad, and they won't fire you. Just walk around like always frustrated. But I think an actionable piece here, because we do have mostly dentists that are listening to this. The first step is it's you. Okay, you as the dentist. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're saying, oh, geez, they have it great, I want you to really take inventory, and I apologize to both of you for this word, because you're going to want to edit this out, but your heart condition towards your people. What that means is, what is your dominant question? I'll be honest, I'll go first. My dominant question circa low 2000s, 2003 through 15, or whatever it was, is, why does no one here give a damn? Why am I the only one who cares? It was a constant recurring question in my mind. And now just being completely transparent is how this is the new question. And it's evolved. But the honest to God question is, how am I so blessed that I have so many people who care and love me and care for me and the organization and what we do? How have I done something so special? How do I deserve this? How have I been favored enough to have something that's so special? So look at the massive differentiation of my thought process. If you ask yourself a question all day long, why does no one care? Your brain's going to go to work and figure out all the reasons why no one cares. Mm-hmm. If your brain is asking you, how am I so blessed?
Found one, found another one. There's another example.
But I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
It's permission is what you're talking about too. It's like you gave permission to the team to be able to come up and say, these are the things that are going wrong, or these are the things that need to be changed. Because that's another scary thing. It's like, do I have permission to actually tell you what I'm seeing in the organization? I think, and on the opposite side of you saying, hey, nobody's caring as much about this organization except for me. And then you have the team who's like, hey, they don't appreciate how hard I'm working for this organization. So people
feel what you can believe. You always say that. Eric always says people feel what you believe. So you can't hack it. So what the words coming out of my mouth when I actually was saying no one gives a shit was not no one gives a shit. It was thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Really appreciate what you did today. All the right words, but the heart condition, the condition of my feelings for that person. And I take this to other places in my life, by the way. I have a teenage girl. And for the longest time, everybody has told me, when your daughter turns 15, you better buckle down, buddy. They turn into, don't worry, your daughter will be a complete raging hormonal piece of work, but she'll come back when she's 21. So just buckle down. So in full disclosure, my heart condition towards my daughter has been fulfilling that. She's the whole thing about teenager. And I got to own it. And I have to change my heart condition towards her. And now I'm like, you know what? She needs daddy. And I take her out for daddy-daughter date nights, and she holds me tight, and she holds my hand. And it was really, if I'm being honest with that, it was my fault, because I've been programmed by every male to tell me, oh, 15 years old, oof, you're in for it, buddy. And it changed me. That bias changed me toward my own daughter. So my call for that little tirade is take inventory of what you're feeling towards your team. And if you can honestly say, I'm feeling like I'm ungrateful, I don't think that they care, good for you. Because you can change it. You can change it tomorrow. You can start practicing to find small successes to acknowledge your team. And that, what you appreciate will appreciate. You'll actually grow them better.
And then I'll also say, just be direct in the things that you want your team to do. So if you want things to change, then you can say, hey, Becky, for next week's meeting, can you prepare the agenda?
There you go.
What I would like you to talk about in the agenda is, I want to know what our collections are year to date and, year over year. And I want to know our treatment acceptance number. Like, let them know. And then eventually you don't have to tell them, because they're going to come prepared, knowing the expectation is for them to get all this information.
Remember what John said, Erica? Remember John? John said, I never do a review with anybody and tell them. He used to tell us, like, set very clear expectations for your people. So in his thing, it was sales managers. So his sales managers would come into the meeting with their sheet of paper, like, you are not going to be happy with me. I filled out, I'm not doing it. Or versus like, you're going to be super happy. Look, I knew. So it showed us, like, all these businesses have such common threads. We as dentists think, oh no, we're doctors. We don't have anything in common with the shoe guy or the whatever. BS. It's all business.
I think to Erika, going back to the meeting, right, of, hey, here's some ideas for next time, like the curation of meetings over time. Like your first one will probably suck and maybe awkward, and you don't really know what to talk about, right? And no one knows who's accountable for what, and X, Y, and Z. But just the act of like intentional time, I think will yield, I think it'll yield like just so much clarity between the two parties, and creating that aligned office manager and the aligned dentist. And like, here's my goals. And, oh, doc, I thought it was this. No, I really want to have, an 8 operatory practice one day, and blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. Right. And we talk about this at Summit, like how much of it is not shared. And Craig's always like, have you shared that with your team? The doc's like, no, I don't even share my collections with my team. Why would I share this kind of thing? And it's like, okay, well, no wonder people aren't going pushing that vision uphill because they don't know. So I would encourage you, if you're not having these meetings with your office manager, or if you're frustrated and you don't feel like you know what's going on, set aside some intentional time. Talk about your profit goals. Talk about HR. Talk about team culture. How's that? How's our hiring? How's our firing? How's our retention? Even things in marketing. I think that there's nothing that a practice manager like Erika should not know about personally in the practice. And over time, they're going to get, the meeting you have today is going to look far different from the one we have in 6 months, right? It's going to be so much better in 6 months because it's like this bob and this weave and this dance. Like, oh, I'm going to bring this and I'm going to do this, and Doc's going to want this and she's going to want this.
Yeah, your thoughts wind up syncing, actually. It's pretty crazy. Your thoughts, over a long time, you're like, I know exactly how this, and it's really cool. It's really neat to get that.
And maybe over time, maybe there's other people. Like, we have a leadership meeting, right? It's my only real standing meeting every week. It's just, the people who are involved in leading people have a 1 hour leadership meeting, and I'm there. And like the greatest days are when I can sit there and be like, bobblehead. Yeah, that looks great. Yeah, good job. Yeah, this is awesome. Right. Yeah. The harder days are when everyone's looking at me like, what do we do? The building's on fire, and there have been those days. So,
well, I just wanted to add that, there isn't a hack for alignment. It's a conditioning. And so there is work upfront that has to be done, but that work will decrease over time. And I think that's the trap, is that people think I have a human being that's going to be the solution to my problems, and they fail because they didn't put enough time and energy.
All I was saying is that the problem is, Erika, is there's so much like just abdication. Like here it is. Here's the practice. You do this, I'll do this. And then it's like, you think it's this divide and conquer, and you're fighting two different wars. You and you're the dentist and the office manager are fighting two different battles, if you will. Erika, if there was a dentist listening as we're kind of wrapping this, could you give, let's say I was in need of this advice if I'm listening to the pod, are there 3 books that you could recommend I put, I gift my up and coming office manager and maybe myself even?
Yeah, absolutely. First, anytime you give gifts, I think, especially if you're not conditioned to do that, you need to make sure that you're giving the why behind it, because I value books, we value books. That might not be a value to them. So you could be giving something that's meaningful to you, but not meaningful to them. And so I would always kind of preface that and say, hey, you know what? I really want to invest in you. And the only way I know how to do that is by gifting you, education. And I'm also doing the work as well. And this is what's been meaningful to me. And now I'm passing that along. But the books, if they're a book person that's meaningful, is John Maxwell. I love anything that he writes. His books are very short, direct. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand what he's trying to say. And you can also get the audio version. 5 Levels of Leadership is fantastic. I would start with that one because it helps to break down, where people are. Like, we are all evolving as leaders. And then I think it can give people the aha moment of how to get to the next level and be more effective. I would say that one. I love Patrick Bet-David. He's very business savvy. I love Your Next 5 Moves. That's going to be somebody, I think, that after you've mastered the communication piece, the leadership piece, now you want to be a savvy business person. I would say Your Next 5 Moves. You're going to switch from being reactionary to being proactive, which I absolutely love that. Multipliers is a fantastic book because that's about growing other people. And I'll say real quick, in order to get to the office manager position, we had to stand out in some way. We had to show that we were the best or the master in something, and to be like the shining light against everybody else. But once you're in this position now, it's not your responsibility to outshine everyone else. It's to make everyone else shine equally, if not brighter. And so Multipliers is that book that will help flip the switch in the way that the old way of thinking, to say my team has to be great in order for me to be effective at this job. I can no longer be the only great person.
This is great. Those are great books. I actually really concur with those. I'd forgotten
you're the
about
one who asked me to read Your Next 5 Moves.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. You're
the one who brought it up to me.
So if you're listening to this and you're like, damn it, I wish my office manager could hear this or be exposed to Erika. Erika teaches a track at our summits, right? So that's why we encourage team members and office managers to come, is so that they get granular information, not just in the audience getting, oh, this is for doctors kind of thing. We make very specific learning tracks for team, office managers, assistants, hygienists, that kind of thing. So look at Bulletproof Summit, right? Coming up, maybe save the date in your calendar for August 8th and 9th in Orlando in 2025. Because Erika, I believe you have an even large, I know people who've been to the summit before know who you are, but obviously the listenership is much bigger than people who've attended. And it may be a great, that may be the great, what am I trying to say, catalyst for something like this to happen, right?
And I do want to add on to, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, I think for a lot of team members that have leadership potential, they just don't know it's possible.
Yeah.
Get them out of their ecosystem, then they can see this is what it can be. And it, it's very inspiring, not only just, for me to impart some of the things that I've learned, but also for them to be around other like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be around lots of other leaders in dental practices.
Great. Craig, what are you going to say?
Also, Erika spoke at AADOM back in September, and was one of the largest audiences that they had at the AADOM convention. It was actually recorded. And funny enough, she was only one of 3 people that spoke at the entire AADOM convention that's actually working in a dental practice. So it shows how kind of disconnected real world. And not to say that you can't be a great speaker and a great consultant and a great help, but there is real credibility about having your office manager really interact with someone who's doing it. So there's that relatability. So I want to second what Peter and Erika said. Even if the date doesn't work for you, enroll your team. Give the gift of that to your team, that gift of education, that gift of to see what Erika can do. Maybe I can do it too. I always say people actually need more affirmation than anything else. They just need permission and affirmation. You may have somebody in your organization right now that is the future Erika. Pour into that person. Yeah. Go ahead and ask your team, I'm looking for someone to lead this. If you think you have what it takes, I want to help you do it. Come talk to me. So don't go grab some person that you think was great and she's got this great resume. There may be an opportunity right inside the organization to groom that person. So
check it out, bulletproofsummit.com. Registration is open. And Erika, it's a long time coming. I've been trying. You're a busy gal. I'm glad to get you on the pod and just yeah, you're a wizard to Craig and I, and I'm glad to see it kind of be exposed to the general audience. So anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. That's the episode, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.